Yeah, guys, we're rolling. American Biography. Let's get into it quickly. I'm going Johnny Ringo today. Very interesting Johnny Ringo to me. I was really getting into Curly Bill. A lot of speculation on that man. Not a lot of facts, or so-called facts. Let's put it that way. Not a lot of people weighing in, because all we can do is just go by stories we've heard, right? That's all that is. And like I said in previous podcasts, I went to the worst school of all time, had the worst classes of all time. History teachers taught us nothing. Worst teachers ever. So anyways, let's get in, right? John Peters Ringo, born May 3rd, 1850, died July 13th, 1882. He was an American Old West outlaw loosely associated with the Cochise County Cowboys. And this was in the Frontier Boom in Tombstone, Arizona territory. He took part in the Mason County War, and that was in Texas, during which he committed his first murder. Apparently he liked it. He was arrested and charged with murder because he was affiliated with the Cochise County Sheriff, Johnny Behan, Ike Clanton, and Frank Stillwell. This was in 1881. He got into a confrontation in Tombstone with Doc Holliday and was suspected by Wyatt Earp of having taken part in attempted murder of Virgil Earp and ambushed the death of Morgan Earp. Ringo was found dead with a bullet wound to the temple, which was ruled as suicide. In the movie, they did not portray it that way. Modern writers have advanced various theories attributing his death to Wyatt Earp, Doc Holliday, Frank Leslie, and Michael O'Rourke. A lot of people, as far as some of the books that I read, said a lot that people said it was Doc. Now, Doc never admitted to doing it, so it is a lot more fun to suggest that it was Doc Holliday, and he shot him right in the middle of the head and from the hip. It's fun. Now, Johnny Ringo was the son of Martin and Mary Peters Ringo, and they had a distant Dutch ancestry, and was born in what later became the small town of Greens Fork Clay Township, Waden County, Indiana. His family moved to Liberty, Missouri in 1856. He was thought to, who gives a fuck about this part? This is stupid. In 1858, his family moved to Liberty, Gallatin. You know, who gives a fuck about that too? On July 30th, 1864, Johnny was 14. His family was in Wyoming. They were en route to California for a better life. His father, Martin Ringo, was killed when he stepped off the wagon holding a shotgun. When it accidentally discharged, the buckshot entered the right side of his face and exited the top of his head. He was dead. The family buried Martin on a hillside alongside the trial. I mean, at 14 to witness that as a kid, that's going to send you off into another stratosphere, wouldn't it? Let's get into the Mason County War. Ringo left his mother, brother, and sisters in San Jose, California in 1869, and he moved to Mason County, Texas. He befriended an ex-Texas Ranger named Scott Cooley, who was adopted son of Ranger Tim Williamson. See, they give you a lot of these names, but we don't have a lot of references for some of these names, so it almost doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? It's like when your girlfriend's telling you about all the girls at the office or whatever, and I don't know their names, so it's just it doesn't mean anything to me. I don't know them. I don't know their names. Okay, let's keep going, though. Trouble started when two American wrestlers, I'm just going to skip these names, guys. Trouble started when two American wrestlers were dragged from Mason jail and lynched by a German mob. The full-blown war began on May 13th, 1875, when Tim Williamson was arrested by a hostile posse and murdered by a German farmer named Peter Badman Bader. That's a cool name. I'll say that one. Cooley and his friends, including Johnny Ringo, conducted a terror campaign against their rivals. Officials called it the Mason County War. Very interesting. And Johnny Ringo was the head of that. Locally, it was called the Hoodoo War. I wonder why it was called that. Cooley retaliated by killing local German ex-deputy sheriff John Worley, then taking his scalp and tossing his body down a well on August 10th, 1875. See, these boys were always offing people. Man, you know, these fights were always, they ended in death. Cooley already had a reputation as a dangerous man and was respected as a Texas Ranger. He killed several others during the war. After Cooley supported Moses Baird was killed. Now, I got to be honest, guys. I'm reading this from I wanted to get into Johnny Ringo, and I was looking up a lot of stuff, but it's funny. A lot of these characters that we grow to know and love in Tombstone, Arizona, don't have a big backstory. I mean, obviously, it's a different time. There wasn't anything to document anything. So Ringo murdered James Chaney on September 25th, 1875, with a friend named Bill Williams. They rode up to Chaney's house. Chaney, who had led Baird into the ambush, greeted them unarmed, which was stupid, invited them in, and began washing his face on the porch. Both Ringo and Williams shot and killed him. Boy, you were trusting, huh? Baird. The two then rode to the house of Dave Duell and called him outside, but he came out with a gun, and they fled back into town. So they were on a mission. Sometime later, Scott Cooley and Johnny Ringo mistook Charlie Bader for his brother Pete, killed him. Both men were jailed in Burnett, Texas by Sheriff A.J. Strickland. By Ringo and Cooley soon broke out of jail with help of their friends, and they parted company to evade the law. The Mason County War ended in about November 1876. After about a dozen individuals had been killed, Scott Cooley was thought to be dead, and Johnny Ringo and his friend George Gladden were in jail. One of the Ringo's alleged cellmates was the notorious killer John Wesley Hardin. That's interesting. While Gladden was sentenced to 99 years, Ringo appears to have been acquitted. 2 years later, Ringo was a constable in Loyal Valley, Texas. Soon after this, he traveled to Arizona. There's a lot of movement going on back then, right? You're just trying to find the place with the most money, the most water, most food, you know? Now let's talk when he arrived in Tombstone. Ringo first appeared in Cochise County, Arizona territory in 1879 with Joseph Graves, a friend from Mason County War. In December 1879, a drunk Ringo shot unarmed Lewis Hancock in Safford, Arizona saloon when Hancock refused a complimentary drink of whiskey, stating that he preferred beer. Damn, take it easy there. Take it easy there, Ringo. Hancock survived this wound. Soon after arriving in Tombstone, he met editor Sam Purdy of the Tombstone Epitaph. That's pretty cool. Who later writes their talk. He said that he was as certain of being killed as he was of living then. He said that he might run along for a couple years more and may not last 2 days. In Tombstone, Ringo developed a reputation as having a bad temper. He may have participated in robberies and killings with the Cochise County Cowboys, a loosely associated group of outlaws. He was occasionally erroneously referred to as Ringgold. That's pretty cool. By local newspapers. He described himself as a speculator in the 1882 Cochise County Great Register. So, I mean, the documentation of this guy really is just when they start writing papers. That's all you get, word of mouth. Confrontation with Doc Holliday. Let's do it. On January 17th, 1882, Ringo and Doc Holliday traded threats, seemed headed for a gunfight. Both men were arrested by Tombstone's chief of police, James Flynn, and hauled before a judge for carrying weapons in town. Both were fined. Judge William H. Stillwell followed up on charges outstanding against Ringo for a robbery in Galeyville, and Ringo was rearrested and jailed on January 20th for their weekend. Just for the weekend. A couple murders, no big deal. Ringo was suspected by the Earps of taking part in December 20th, 1881, ambush of Virgil Earp that crippled him for life, and the March 18th, 1882 murder of Morgan Earp while he was shooting pool in a Tombstone saloon. Now, we know that one from the movie. Now, joins the posse pursuing the Earps. Deputy U.S. Marshal Wyatt Earp and his posse killed Frank Stillwell in Tucson on March 20th, 1882. After the shooting, the Earps and federal posse set out on the vendetta. They called it the Vendetta Posse, to find and kill the others they held responsible for ambushing Virgil and Morgan. Cochise County Sheriff Johnny Behan received warrants from Tucson judge for arresting the Earps and Holliday. He deputized Ringo and 19 other men, many of them friends of Stillwell and the Cochise County Cowboys. When you deputize somebody, what do? You just give them a star and you be like, all right, we're ready to go. Here's your little star we just made. I guess that's how it works. During the Earp vendetta ride, Wyatt Earp killed one of Ringo's closest friends, Curly Bill Brocious. That's the famous gunfight out there in the Iron Springs. About 20 miles from Tombstone was the Iron Springs. Earp told his biographer, Stuart Lake, that a man named Florinto Cruz confessed to being the lookout at Morgan's murder and identified Ringo, Stillwell, Swilling, and Brocious as Morgan's killers. The local posse pursued and came close to the federal posse at Henry C. Hooker's ranch. Hooker's the one that was played by Charleston Heston. Hooker's ranch, but never faced the Earp lawmen. Former Pima County Sheriff Bob Paul, who had been in Tombstone at the time and volunteered to ride with the Behan posse, wrote a letter to the Tucson Citizen on March 3rd, 1898. In response to an earlier story he said was full of errors. I think most stories are full of errors. They're stories. You know, it's always just one person's thought process, one person, the way they saw it, the way they remember it. He said that the Earp posse had told Hooker to tell Behan and his posse where they were camped. Hooker told Behan where the Earps were and camped, where the Earps were camped, but the posse left in the opposite direction. Now let's talk about the death of Ringo. During Tombstone's 4th of July festivities, Ringo drank heavily. Hell yeah, let's go. He left town 2 days later, taking several bottles of liquor to ride. Deputy Billy, this is a tongue twister. Deputy Billy Breckenridge saw him 2 days later near Dials Ranch in the South Pass of the Dragoon Mountains. Dragoon, Dragoon, mountains. He later wrote that Ringo was very drunk, reeling in the saddle. He encouraged Ringo to follow him back to the Goodridge Ranch, but he was drunk and stubborn and went on his way. I think this was the last time he was seen alive. At about 3 p.m. on July 13th, ranch hands at a nearby ranch heard a shot. Now, what a coroner is claiming is that it was suicide. They're claiming that it was a suicide. Teamster James Yost was hauling wood when he found Ringo's body on July 14th, seated in a bunch of five large blackjack oaks growing up in a semicircle from one root, and in the center of them was a large flat rock, which made a comfortable seat. He was not more than 700 feet from Smith's house in West Turkey Creek Valley in Arizona Territory. His body had already turned black from the desert heat. Jesus. His feet were wrapped in strips of cloth torn from his undershirt. Ringo had lost his horse with his boots tied to the saddle. Get the fuck out of here. The coroner's reported note evidently traveled but a short distance in the foot gear. There was a bullet hole in his right temple and an exit wound in the back of his head. The fatal wound was upward at a 45-degree angle between right eye and ear. His revolver, according to the coroner's report, Ringo's Colt single-action Army .45 revolver held 5 cartridges. A knife cut was found at the base of his scalp. See, that's interesting. As if someone had cut it with a knife. His horse was found 11 days later, about 2 miles away, with Ringo's boots still tied to the saddle. Coroner's inquest officially ruled his death a suicide. Now, the knife is what throws you off, right? Either that or he was just really suicidal, drunk, and cut himself to feel something. Who knows? Ringo's body is buried near the base of the tree where it was discovered. I'd love to go check that spot out. The grave is located on private land. Okay. A gate on a nearby road permits visitors to view the site. So there's that. Despite the coroner's ruling on newspaper reports that Ringo had frequently threatened to commit suicide. Okay. Yeah, Ringo was a very disturbed man, and that the event was expected at any time. Alternative theories of doubtful possibility about Ringo's death have been purposed over the years. Some assert that the lack of powder burns on his head suggests he was shot from a distance. The coroner's jury report does not mention the presence or absence of powder burns. The coroner's jury report does not mention the presence or absence of powder burns. Furthermore, Ringo's body was already turning black due to composition. A member of the coroner's jury wrote in 1934, I showed James Yost where the bullet had entered the tree on the left side. Blood and brains were oozing from the wound, matted his hair. There was an empty shell in the six-shooter. That's interesting. And the hammer was on that. I called it a suicide 52 years ago. I am still calling it a suicide. I guess I'm the last coroner's jury. Here's Wyatt Earp's claim about how he died. I guess according to the book, I Married Wyatt Earp, which author and collector Glenn Boyer claimed to have assembled from manuscripts written by Earp's third wife, Josephine Marcus Earp. Earp and Doc Holliday returned to Arizona with some friends in early July and found Ringo camped in West Turkey Creek Valley. As Ringo attempted to flee up the canyon, Earp shot him with a rifle. Oh, okay. Boyer refused to produce the source manuscripts, and reporters wrote that this explanation were conflicted and not credible. New York Times contributor Alan Barrow wrote that I Married Wyatt Earp is now recognized by Earp researchers as a hoax. See, I mean, you got to just take what you've been given, I guess, at this point. Tombstone historian Ben T. Trawick thought the story about Earp's involvement was credible, reasoning that only Earp had sufficient motive. He was probably in the area at the time and near the end of his life, and he told one historian in detail how he killed Johnny Ringo. Earp was interviewed in 1888 by an agent of California historian Hubert Bancroft, and in 1932, Frank Lockwood, who authored Pioneer Days in Arizona, wrote that Earp told both of them that he killed Ringo as he left Arizona in March 1882, almost 4 months before Ringo died. He included other details that do not match what was known about Ringo, that of the reported Ringo's death by the coroner. Earp reported this story to be at least three other people. In an interview with a reporter in Denver in 1896, Earp denied that he had killed Ringo, but later privately claimed once again that he had. The Doc Holliday story. The Holliday theory is similar to the Earp theory, except that Holliday alleged to have killed Ringo. See, this is so funny. What I'm reading here is that Holliday alleged to have killed Ringo. And then other parts that I've read that he denied it and other people said it. So we'll take a lot of this with a grain of salt, I guess. A variant popularized the movie Tombstone, asserts that Holliday stepped in for Earp response to the gunfight challenge for Ringo and shot him. Records of Pueblo County, Colorado District Court indicate that Holliday and his attorney appeared in court on July 11th, 14th, and 18th in 1882 to answer charges of larceny. However, a right of capias, whatever the fuck that means, was issued for him on the 11th, suggesting that he did not, in fact, appear in court on that date. Ringo's body was found on the 14th, 6 days before Ringo's death. 6 days before his death, okay. The Pueblo Daily Chieftain reported that Holliday was in Colorado about 670 miles from Turkey Creek, Arizona, and then Leadville, about 700 miles. On July 18th, there was still an arrest warrant outstanding on Holliday in Arizona for his part in Frank Stillwell's murder, making it the unlikely that he would have entered Arizona at that time. I'm starting to believe that one. Now, we got one more theory. I hope, hope y'all haven't turned it off already. Some accounts attribute Ringo's death to Michael O'Rourke, a gambler who was arrested in Tucson in January 1881 on suspicion of murdering a mining engineer named Henry Schneider. Wyatt Earp is said to have protected him from being lynched by a mob organized and led by Ringo. O'Rourke escaped from jail in 1881 and never stood trial on the murder charges. You just escape from jail and just go through the rest of your day. It's cool. The last documented sighting of O'Rourke was in the Dragoon Mountains near Tombstone during May of 1881, well mounted and equipped. From then on, he is referred to only in unsubstantiated rumors and legends. According to one, a combination of the debt he owed Earp and the grudge he held against Ringo prompted him to return to Arizona in 1882. Track Ringo down and kill him. While some sources considered the story plausible, others point out that O'Rourke, like Holliday, would have been reluctant to re-enter Arizona with a murder warrant hanging over his head. The Frank Leslie claim: while in Yuma Territorial Prison for killing his wife, buckskin Frank Leslie reportedly confessed to a guard that he had killed Ringo. Few believed his story, and some thought he was simply claiming credit for it to curry favor with Earp's inner circle, or for whatever notoriety he wanted to bring on himself. So, because it looked like Johnny Ringo was one of those guys. If you beat Johnny Ringo, you got a cool label over your head. So I think that's going to conclude it. I think with a lot of these characters, you can only go by, and these are real characters, but of course there's only a few little bits written about these guys, and they all die early too. So Ringo died at 32 years of age. Anyways, guys, I'm out. Later.